Hello and welcome. In today's episode, I would like to explain the difference between bookkeeping and strategic bookkeeping in order to help you do better in business. This is going to be a short but punchy episode that helps you to self-assess whether you think strategic bookkeeping will actually help you optimize your profit and cash, because what we find is that it does. We find that when we hold our clients accountable to their numbers on a monthly basis with a mix of structured agenda as well as bespoke, tailored to them, they are able to decide on the action needed in order to scale their business, right? In order to improve their profit, improve their cash flow, and ultimately then pull that beautiful thing called prosperity out of their business. And we'll explore a bit more of that in today's show. So without further ado, let's go. For more information on this episode or how to work with me, check out the show notes or visit betterinbusiness.global. You've tuned into Better in Business with Jeannie. As an award-winning strategic bookkeeper and business veteran, I am dedicated to helping entrepreneurs learn, grow, and prosper. This podcast aims to challenge your thinking. If you're not thinking the right way, how can you act the right way? Each episode will dive into key drivers of success, which I also call the rules of the game. Learn the rules, play to win. Let's go. I like to start every episode by reminding you that it is globally recognized that pillar one for the success of any business is up-to-date, accurate bookkeeping. If your books are not right up to date, tune into episode 1, please. You can also get in touch with me if you'd like some help. Okay, my friends, so let's dive into the difference between bookkeeping and strategic bookkeeping, so that you can understand the vast difference, because there is a massive difference, so that hopefully you can understand why I have a vision that every single business owner, certainly every single client of ours, be engaged in strategic bookkeeping. And primarily the reason for that, which I'll expand on a little in this episode, is because I see what happens when our clients are engaged in strategic bookkeeping, and I see what happens sometimes when they're not, which means they're not really paying attention to the numbers. So first of all, in a nutshell, bookkeeping is about those up-to-date, accurate accounting numbers, okay? So we call bookkeeping numbers 101, yeah? So up-to-date, accurate accounting records, which is, I've said it before and I'll say it again, globally recognized as pillar one for the success of any business, because that's the only way you can see how your business is performing in terms of profit and cash. So that's pretty important, right? And we all know, or hopefully we all know, the shocking business failure statistics. So around 80% of businesses within their first 5 years shut up shop. And one of the big reasons for that is because bankruptcy and this kind of thing catches business owners off guard, okay? They don't know what they don't know. They often don't know when they are getting into trouble in terms of cash flow. They don't know what's causing it. I've got a whole episode on that, the 7 deadly cash flow sins. I think it's the second episode in the Better in Business series, so I would encourage you to tune into that. So if bookkeeping is numbers 101, so bookkeeping is preparing the numbers, so making sure your numbers are up to date and accurate, yeah? And you know that I say if that's not the case, please make sure that's happening now. And if you've got a bookkeeper who's constantly letting you down, so I ran into a past client the other day or the other evening, and she is using another bookkeeper, okay? So she tried doing it herself because she found bookkeeping was a cost, and let me tell you right now, it is a cost. When she was leaving us, she said, I don't think I can afford it. It's a cost I'd rather not have. And I actually said to her, yeah, I agree, it's a cost. Yeah, bookkeeping is absolutely a cost. Strategic bookkeeping is an investment. But I digress, and I'll get to that in a second. So I ran into this past client the other day, a beautiful past client that I just love, and she said to me, "Oh, Jeannie, this bookkeeper I've got, she's constantly behind. She's constantly late. I just received fines from the ATO," right? And I kind of paused at that point because I asked myself, number one, why is anyone putting up with that service? And number two, that means your numbers are not in a state that you can actually use them in order to do better in business, which is what you need to do. So anyway, she did ask me to give her a call, and I'll absolutely be doing that to see if we can help her out, because we offer a platinum level of service that we believe is unmatched by any others, and we work our bums off to keep your accounting records, your bookkeeping up to date and accurate on a weekly basis. So if that is bookkeeping, the numbers 101, then let me tell you what strategic bookkeeping is. And just back to bookkeeping for a minute and how I said it is very much a cost. So yes, bookkeeping is a cost. Strategic bookkeeping is where this becomes an investment. So strategic bookkeeping is a 5-step numbers methodology that I have developed myself. And it's very much like the management accounting process, okay? So our 5-step numbers methodology goes like this. So we've got numbers 101, then numbers knowledge, numbers strategy, numbers targets, and numbers monitoring. All right, so it's a beautiful 5-step simple methodology, as I said, akin to management accounting, and behind that my team and I have structured agendas that we refine from time to time based on client feedback and based on the various results that we see. So let's dive into how strategic bookkeeping helps you to optimize your profit and cash, which actually is reasonably simple, okay? So once we've got those beautiful up-to-date accurate numbers, and I developed strategic bookkeeping like 13 years ago and I did it working with a client, and so I might reflect on that story while I'm kind of explaining how it can help you optimize your profit and cash. So basically, we know that successful businesses, successful business owners, they are looking at their numbers at least once a month. Once a month is ideal. Sometimes we find we've got to do a little bit more often if a client's got, a fair bit of pain or some pain points, but then within a short period of time, really, we just want to stop once a month and have a really strategic, structured look at them, okay? This doesn't take a long time. This is about working smarter, not harder. So we know that that's what successful business owners do, and that's what we need everyone to do, right? So this is about sitting down on a monthly basis, opening up the books, having a look at the profit and loss and the balance sheet and the accounts receivable and the accounts payable and everything else. But we love to start with the profit and loss and having a look at the revenue, the cost of sales, the operating costs, the gross profit, the net profit, in order to look at what's been happening retrospectively in the business, so that we can understand the impact of income generating activities and of cost of sales, of wages, all those kind of things, right? Okay. And so from there, we are able to start the question and answer, right? Because we're in there investigating the numbers, right? And we begin to ask each other questions, and I'll give you an example. So these are real life examples. So why did revenue go up that month? And you might say, oh, actually we did a partnership activity, or I did some social media marketing, or I had a flashing sign out the front of my shop, or whatever you did. Okay, and then an example of another question, or I'll go back to that one for a minute, and then from one question leads to other questions, right? And in the early days of doing this process, often there's lots of questions. We're not always looking to answer everything at session one, but as the sessions progress, you're making, you're getting to know so much more about your business as you work on the business in this way, that the questions often get less because you're already on top of things, okay? Because when we look at things retrospectively, we want to get you working then proactively, right? Because what we find is a lot of business owners are very, very reactive rather than proactive. But once we're in there asking you questions like that, okay, so why did revenue spike that month? Or why did revenue spike in these 2 months of the year? I remember asking a client about that, and that client said to me, oh, okay, so over those 2 months of the year, we're engaged in a particular promotional activity with this particular kind of client. And then I said, oh, okay, so, and in that couple of months, they made really high profits as well, right? So then the question is, tell me more about that particular kind of work and that client. In that case, they really hated that kind of work. And profit and money is not the primary reason to do something, right? It still gives us great insights in order to make better business decisions, in order to do better in business, but this line of questioning can go anywhere, okay? So then we get to looking at, like, if we're going from top to bottom, which is not always the way you want to go. If you've read, I would direct you to a great book called Profit First, and Michael talks about the bottom-up approach, which management accountants absolutely love, and that is we want to start by looking at the net profit right down the bottom and then working upwards. But realistically, when we are looking at the profit and loss with you, we're looking at trends, right? So we're looking at a 12-month period at all times, yeah? So we're looking at the income trends over 12 months. It only takes looking from right to left backwards, you know, or left to right, and from bottom to top, and from top to bottom, and across again, to see trends. You know, is income steady, or are we seeing some spikes, you know, or peaks and troughs here and there, yeah? So trends are really important. So we're looking at trends constantly, and you and I are getting a feel for the numbers. We're reading the story that the numbers are telling us. So then when it comes to cost of sales, just for example, let's say you're in a service-based business, which 80% of the people listening to this podcast probably are, then wages are probably your cost of sales expense there, right? And so then we will have a look at that and the impact on gross profit, and then we will look at the kind of gross profit you should be making, right? So I'm going to go back to our model for a minute, a 5-step model, okay? Numbers 101. Numbers knowledge was the second one. Can you see in this process how you would begin to learn and learn and learn? And what you are learning on day 1 is very different to what you know on day 365 of this strategic bookkeeping journey, okay? Step 3 in our methodology is numbers strategy. Now that is about when we're working with you, we're making an effort to get more strategic around your numbers, which means we are recategorizing things. And an example of that is when we're first working with you, we might see that your wages is in operational costs, whereas 80% of it is a cost of sale. And if that doesn't mean a lot to you, that's okay. But do you know what? The less you know, the more opportunity there is to optimize their profit and cash, because I guarantee what you don't know, and therefore the opportunity is great. Okay, so we're in that numbers strategy 3rd step. We are making those numbers more meaningful. So numbers 101 is accurate numbers. Step 3, numbers strategy, is beautiful, meaningful numbers. We love that. But step 4 is the numbers targets. Okay, so that's what I just touched on then. And what we do is we look to industry benchmarks for your industry. So let's say you are an electrician and you do mainly residential electrical work. Okay, so then we are able to access the industry benchmarks for a business like yours. We also will combine that with using something called the rule of thirds, which says that oftentimes a third of your revenue will go to cost of sales, and a third is operational, and then a third is profit. That's for a business under management, is a great rule. But we use benchmarks and the rule of thirds and consultation with you over your business, okay, to come up with what is a realistic, meaningful set of targets. And an example, when we're working with restaurants, right, often their net profit benchmark that we might aim for is, say, 11% of turnover. So they're quite skinny margins, yeah? So if we've got a restaurant that we're working with and they're struggling a bit, when we hit 11% net profit, we're like, whoop, whoop. Where there might be another business where we're like, 11% is not okay. Benchmark is much higher, and you've got, you know, from everything we can tell, you can you can squeeze a lot more juice out of this orange. So meaningful targets, not a stab in the dark, is really, really important, okay? And when we know what targets to set, that's when, again, you don't know what you don't know. You might not know that your cost of sales is too high, and there are ways that you can get it down, yeah? And those ways are a journey, all right? So that is like the targets number 4. And then the numbers monitoring is when you sit down monthly. So imagine we've been doing this process for say 6 months with you. And we sit down again in our monthly meeting and pull up all the numbers, and we've been doing it 6 months, so there's a lot we know, and we're able to go, okay, now we know your targets, absolutely back to front, right? And we know, okay, here's the actual numbers, here's the results for the month and the year, because we're looking 12 months, month on month. And then we go, okay, great, you know, we've hit this target, etc. Okay? Or if we haven't hit the target, why? Yeah? And what is the action that we need to take in order to move from the actual to the targeted numbers? Okay? So even though some of this may sound very foreign, it is still a simple system. Yeah? And it's an age-old system. Now, in terms of the kind of return on investment you can expect from strategic bookkeeping, let's go into that now with some real examples, okay? Which lovely clients will I think of and kind of give you some examples. So I always say profit and cash is like oxygen for a business. So we're always really working on that. So what you can expect when you work strategically in your numbers is you can usually expect quick wins early. That's what I've always seen, okay? So I went into a restaurant once, and within about 15 minutes, I saved him $100,000. And to be honest, it didn't really, like, I was thrilled. I was so happy, but I was kind of getting used to it, because if you're not paying attention to your numbers on a monthly basis, you'd be surprised. And then over time is where we see really meaningful wins. So sometimes in the early days, it's things that are more obvious to us, and we also help you to understand why, keeping an eye on subscription. So we help you with consolidating costs that can save you easily, you know, like even in my numbers, if I dive into my numbers on a monthly basis with my numbers coach as well here on the team. And if we pay a lot of attention, we can save 10 grand in no time, right? So that's the quick wins early on, and consolidating expenses and things like that. And then also, because of the insights you get, you're able to go about taking action. So, for example, a lovely client that I work with, so some of the action he took was around management and team in order to free up his time, which allowed him to win more work. So the impact was on revenue going up, and then because of that, and he's a smart operator, his gross profit went up as well, and his net profit went up as well. The other thing I'll mention is we're able to see clearly where the pain in a business is, and it's always in 1, 2, or 3 areas, right? So then once let's say, for example, your wages as a percentage of turnover is too high, but that's the only problem in the business, and you're like, oh, okay, it felt like everything was wrong. And we're like, well, no, actually, some of the things are going really, really well. We can help you zone in on that area, right? And then we can help to create an action plan around what's going to get that cost of sales wages back into a budgeted number, right? A realistic number, a targeted number, a benchmark number. Okay, so what we find is that our clients can easily, like, in terms of the fee attached to strategic bookkeeping, they can easily make that back over a year, right? Usually they would make 10 times that amount back, sometimes even, you know, more than that. Whereas with bookkeeping, so think of it this way, if you've got your bookkeeping up to date and accurate, but you've got no one holding you accountable to the numbers. And let me tell you right now, if I didn't have someone doing it with me, I wouldn't do it either. I'm happy to do it with my clients, but I would put myself last, right? So even bookkeepers need strategic bookkeepers. So if your numbers are up to date and accurate, are you actually using them? Are you looking at them and using them? Do you understand what they mean, and do you understand how to optimize your profit and cash. So what I guess I see with clients and with business owners is with the best intentions, they can't and they don't do this themselves, which is why I highly recommend that you give strategic bookkeeping a try. I just want to mention something that I think is kind of important, kind of special about the difference with between working with someone like us. So we are true technical bookkeepers, also known as accounting technicians. All right. So we're strategic bookkeepers versus working with your accountant. So oftentimes there can be a misconception among business owners that accountants can do everything better. Now, I know accountants who privately tell me that the worst bookkeeping comes out of accountants' offices. All right, so accountants aren't always best placed to do the bookkeeping. And in terms of doing the strategic bookkeeping or the management accounting process, once again, they can offer up some really great solutions. But here's something I've noticed when it comes to the difference between us and them from time to time. And that is, I have a little funny saying, and that is that we are prepared to get down and dirty in the numbers with you and come into the meetings without the need to have all the answers, but ready to ask all the questions. Yeah. And we don't want to give you static stuff that you'll never use. Your business is evolving and moving, as is your life, and the two tend to be mixed. And we want to be in the numbers working with you rather than giving you really static budgets and forecasts that often either you don't understand, you don't end up using, when really what you need is just help when you need it and more, I guess, just more realistic stuff. So that's something that I think is really great about the way that we do the strategic bookkeeping compared to some of what I've seen coming out of the accountant's offices, and it's feedback from clients. Right, so I've seen clients pay big money for like a budget or something like that they're kind of frustrated by at the end of it because they're like, it's now redundant because things have changed so much and nobody's really sitting down with us and helping us with how it all works. That said, what I love is working with accountants. So we want to be able to work closely with your accountant as well is always helpful. So to wrap up this episode, what I will say is that I have a vision, like I said, for all clients to be engaged in strategic bookkeeping. I would love to go to all Aussie businesses and say, fire your bookkeeper and hire a strategic bookkeeper. And that includes us. If you're just using us for bookkeeping at the moment, I really would encourage you to step up to strategic bookkeeping. We don't have lock-in contracts. So we don't, you can try strategic bookkeeping out. And if you find that you don't get the results you want, then you can pivot back to basic bookkeeping. That said, I do encourage you to play the long game, right? So if you're listening to this episode and you think, yeah, you know what, I've known for a while I need to be paying attention to my numbers, then what I would encourage you to do is just reach out through betterinbusiness.global, say hi, and let's jump on the phone or the Zoom for 15 minutes so I can do a quick needs analysis and answer any questions that you have got, and help you self-assess whether you'd like us to help you with strategic bookkeeping now or in the future. Thanks for tuning in. For more information on this episode or how to work with me, check out the show notes. If you'd like to know how I can help you do better in business, you know where to find me, betterinbusiness.global. See you in the next episode.